Welcome to Built for This, the podcast where property meets purpose. I'm Talia Hugh.
And I'm Megan Rovers. Together we're here to unpack the real stories behind the people shaping the property industry. From bold first steps to career-defining moments and the life lessons they've built along the way.
If you're passionate about property, curious about the human side of success, or just looking to build something meaningful, you're in the right place.
So let's unpack it. Welcome to Built for This.
Thanks, Megan. Very generous with that intro.
Always.
Welcome to the pod, Jayden, and whether we leave this in or not, I'm just going to let you know that we just actually recorded about 10 minutes of our episode and we weren't recording. So let's take it back again, Jayden. What was the moment or transition point when you knew your path after football was going to be financial planning? What drew you to that world?
Take two. I'll try and hopefully get something similar to what I said before. I guess growing up, I was always really good at math, accounting in high school. It seemed easy to me at the time, and you know, when things are easy, you're sort of drawn to it a little bit more. But yeah, my first love growing up still was always football. It just probably didn't seem like it could ever be a reality until really late. In fact, I always love to remind my dad of this, but I asked him when I was about 16, do you ever think I could play AFL? And to his credit, I don't think there would have been another person that would have said yes, but he did say no. He said, you're not good enough. It was something that really only happened really, really late, and you know, really grateful to have had that opportunity. But yeah, I only spent 4 years at Richmond. The average career is about 3 or 4 years. And just by chance, one day I was at a teammate's house and he had a few mates over, and one of them was a financial planner. And I got chatting to him for a little bit, and yeah, what he spoke about sounded really, really interesting. I'd been playing footy professionally for 3 or 4 years at that stage, and had taken a bit of an interest in personal finance, and sort of understanding, well, hey, there's this profession out there where you can do this sort of stuff for other people and get paid for it was just a foreign concept to me, but one that really gravitated towards. So he gave me his textbook from the diploma he did with Kaplan. I took it home, read that, and reached out to the AFL Players Association because they run an ex-goal program where they would put you up with an employer for 1 day a week for a season. So I did that at a firm out in Carlton called The Practice. Got mentored by a really great guy named Matthew Morrison, who was their head financial advisor there, and all the support staff there at the time were really, really great. And that's when I sort of made the move into there, started the diploma online, and then when I got delisted, got started with all the degree afterwards. So,
You mentioned that you were involved obviously with Richmond for a few years. How do you think that's shaped who you are today, and what are some pivotal moments or learnings you got from being involved in the club?
Yeah, playing AFL, I'm incredibly lucky. Not everyone gets to do it. It's a boyhood dream, played in front of over 80,000 people at the MCG. Probably wish I hadn't after the way I performed that night. But yeah, just an incredible experience, and one I'm really, really grateful for. And I do think that with anything in life, there's a lot of luck involved. And I mentioned before, as an example, some of the guys I'm playing with footy at the moment up in Swan Hill, just extremely talented, unbelievably talented, and why the hell aren't they playing AFL? And you talk to them, and it's third generation farming families. It's not easy to travel from Swan Hill to Bendigo to play TAC Cup or Coates League as it is now. So it's a massive, massive commitment, and for some people it's just not viable. Growing up in Altona, metropolitan Melbourne, having parents that could take me to training and all that is something I'm very, very grateful and lucky to have. And then getting drafted to Richmond, walking in, the first person I see is Matthew Richardson. As I said, I was betting on him to win the Brownlow 4 weeks earlier. So, really, really awesome experience. But then also, you get thrown into a pretty, competitive, corporate, commercial environment really early on. So, everyone thinks about how cool will it be to be, training with your mates every day, playing footy for a living, but you also, can take for granted. We had leading teams come in and advise us, for 3 or 4 of my years at Richmond. Businesses pay a lot of money to have access to things like that. All the sports scientists, the organisation, everything. It's an incredible experience if you're able to take it in. And I guess one thing as well, I was incredibly immature. I was only 18 when I got drafted. Everyone takes different amounts of time with their maturity. And I remember a coach at one stage just basically giving me feedback saying, you're immature. But my response was, as an immature 19, is like, you are, So, yeah, I think incredible experience, a lot of life lessons I've learned and a lot of things I've taken away from it. Potentially could have been more as well. But there's a lot of connections that I've made through the footy club that I still have today too, which I'm pretty grateful for.
You mentioned luck and maybe a little bit of right place, right time. How do you think that fits now in your financial advising? I know a lot of people say, I bought this property, it was good luck, or it was just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Do you believe in that still in your current profession?
It depends. So you can have opportunities, but you've got to be in a position to take advantage of the opportunity as well. So that's where a little bit of luck can come into it. There's also other factors that are completely outside of our control that can really influence our outcomes, and specifically as it relates to investing, like macroeconomic factors. So the Labor government, what they come in and do, how they change tax policies. We've seen what that's done to the Victorian property market for the last 4 or 5 years. It's lagging every other capital city and state because of largely attributed to a lot of the changes to Labor. So someone who came in and bought in Geelong, in 2021 or 22, they've probably just had a 30, 40, 50% growth rise through COVID, bought at the top of the market. Labor's come in and changed a few of the regulations, increased the land tax, and 4 years later they could be sitting on losses. Equally, someone in 2019 buys a property in Mermaid Waters in Queensland. COVID hits, and you've got all these Mexicans migrating north, and their properties are valued by double. Probably they bought a great long-term property, but still luck that you've doubled your money in 4 years. I don't think many people would have thought that best case scenario they'd be doing that. So yeah, there's a lot of luck in everything. I still think that over the long term, everything reverts to the mean, and you still got to try and make really good quality decisions.
Talking about property, obviously this is a property podcast,
Yeah.
So we'll try and touch on other, asset classes as well. What's your relationship like with property, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, growing up, I never really had much of an interest in property. To me, it was only ever a roof over my head. But in saying that, my relationship with money growing up it was only there for fun and to live life. It wasn't really there for security or anything like that. I didn't grow up in an extremely wealthy family, but I also don't feel like we ever really went without. It would have been probably, and again, I probably grew up with people in a similar socio-economic environment to me, but you weren't getting things every week. It's like, Mum, can I have this? It's like, I'll write a list to Santa. You didn't get everything at the time, but I certainly didn't feel like we ever went without. But yeah, investing, all that sort of stuff early on was probably really foreign to me, and property was only ever a roof over your head. When you get into financial planning a little bit, and to probably take a little bit of a step back, this profession really started as a sales industry. Financial planners really evolved to sell investment products. That's how the whole industry started. So you kind of got to recognise that with that, there's a lot of inherent conflicts of interest. Why would I recommend a property to someone if I'm not going to get paid for that recommendation? So when you're going through a lot of the training, a lot of it is based on, equities, bonds, diversification. There's not a whole heap on property itself. And I wouldn't say so much that I drank the Kool-Aid or anything like that, but to me, theoretically, diversification and things like that made sense. So when I put all that together early on, I was always a pretty big advocate, I think, to owning your own home, because again, that was probably how I was brought up. It's a roof over your head, it's stability, it's mine, I can do whatever I want from it. Then, financially speaking, the ATO we love the PPR because the ATO gives you an exemption from paying tax on it, which is really fantastic. and then you can borrow against the property to do other things. So investing in property was something that only come really late to the party for me. And again, I was probably in a conflicted environment initially. But my experiences over the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of advising, and again, it's really anecdotally, if I was to classify the 3 types of people we really work with in terms of how wealthy they are as well, to rank them, at the top is definitely business owners. They're the ones taking most of the risk. If you run a really good business, you get the reward from that, you build wealth, and our wealthiest clients have all generated it from business. After that, if I look at the average Australian, like a PAYG sort of employee, one who hasn't really been involved in business, I'd say the wealthiest cohort we have generated the majority of their wealth through property. Okay.
And we're not paying you to say this.
No. And it's not necessarily through the property itself. Like if I had $1 million in cash and didn't want to borrow, I probably wouldn't be buying a property. I wouldn't want to take on the illiquidity risk. I wouldn't want to take on the risk of things blowing up. I wouldn't want to take on the risk of tenants. To me, the only real reason that property over the longer term probably outperforms most other accessible asset classes for us is because of leverage. Outside of that, again, I probably wouldn't be investing in property. But again, that's me. What works for me might not work for someone else. And I think this is the other thing that people can get really hung up on when it comes to financial planning, is they think that there's things that just work for everyone. But we're all unique individuals, and I always think that the best financial plan isn't the one that makes the most sense on a spreadsheet. It's the one the client's actually going to follow. And for a lot of clients I work with, that's a property plan.
What's it like working with different generations and their relationship with property? I'm just thinking, I look at property as a pretty disposable asset. I think we can move really easily. I think, and this being my advisor, that I do move quite quickly. But then I look at my parents, and they've been in the same house for 40 years, and I feel like maybe their generation, it was normal to own your own home and kind of live in there, whereas I used it to kind of get stepping stones and to get where I want to be. What's it like now, I guess, with with all the generations? Do you see a difference in their relationship with property?
A little bit. It is a little hard to, paint a broad brush and say, the boomer generation thinks this and the younger generation thinks this. But what I've probably found a little bit more recently is that the generation coming through, there's a lot of extremes. All of them are just ham, property every 2 years, release equity, buy another one. Where I reckon this year I've probably had maybe 10 to 12 conversations with clients that I think are in the perfect position to use equity or leverage and purchase an investment property, and half of them have said, I don't want to do that because a few of them said, I don't believe in it ethically. I don't think we should be playing games with people's livelihoods and their ability to put a roof over their head. Whereas I haven't heard that from boomers at the moment. So it depends really on the person, I think, and their upbringing and many other different factors.
I'll ask one more question, then Tals, over to you for a question. I have noticed on Instagram, and I know that I don't think you're on Instagram, but there is a little bit of a trend at the moment that it is cheaper to rent than to buy property. And I think that goes to the point of what you're saying, that maybe it might be over time by the time you pay interest and stamp duty and all those types of things. But your main point there is you can't leverage off a rental property. You've got to be investing somewhere else. So I guess the messages you put out, how do you, the client relationship you currently have with people, how do you, I guess, advise without telling to a certain degree?
Yeah, that's a great question too, because there's a really unique position with a financial advisor where, you want to provide advice and tell a client what to do, but you also need to understand, okay, well, what's this client going to be comfortable with? And I think most important, the best financial or most effective financial planning, I believe, comes from helping a client understand the type of life that they want to live. Okay, if you don't start with that end in mind, everything else is a little bit meaningless and it's never or got less of a chance to stick. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that a client has to have these really concrete goals and objectives and a really great understanding of the life they want to live, because use you an example back at when you were 24, 25, you're young, earning a bit of money, not in a relationship, just having fun building a business. Like, you're not really ready to think 10 years ahead and put in some concrete plans about all the things I want to do, and that's absolutely fine. You got to meet people where they're at, I think. And I think that's one of, the greatest strengths of a good financial planner is you have a bit of a framework of how you want to advise people, but within that, you've got to be adaptable just to provide a really good outcome for people. But I guess back to the core of the question is you have conversations with people and I think really narrow down what's most appropriate for them. Okay, and then you can help educate them on what the outcomes mean, what the risks are. It's sort of like co-building a plan. And then what that also does, it invokes something called the endowment effect. It's a bit like the IKEA effect, whereas you value something more because you've had a say in it or you've helped build it. And that's what we try to do. And it's not from a manipulative point of view. It's because I really want the client to buy in and get invested into what we're trying to create and what we're trying to help them do. If that means, like I've got one guy at the moment, I've worked with him for 7-8 years, absolute legend. He just really, really values flexibility at the moment. He's got 2 investment properties at the moment, no desire to buy a home because he doesn't know where he'll be next week, let alone in 12 months. And that's absolutely fine. And we're talking about another client that I'm working with at the moment and, very set in stone around where they want to live in the long term. Like, they know exactly what the house looks like, where it is, how far it is from the city in Sydney. So, I want to build a plan that's going to help them get that property with either the least amount of risk or, the most amount of wealth at the end of it. So, help them develop a strategy that's going to achieve that.
Interesting. And over to you, Tals, because I've got about 20 other questions I can ask. So.
No, go for it. I did just want to touch on, though, like with that, like in your profession, thank you so much. The results don't always show up overnight. And I know we were chatting earlier when you first got here that, you can only control what you can control. And there's some clients that I'm sure you've got that try and set up their absolute plan and it's most likely not going to go exactly to that. So how do you personally know, like throughout their journey, but also your journey, that you're on track, like you're doing a good job, that type of thing?
Yeah, that's another really great question. And, you can create a financial plan for someone, okay, but really it should be financial planning. It's an ongoing thing. It's not like just set and forget. It's like, I can come up with a gym program and diet for someone, but that's going to evolve over time as their body composition changes and they get stronger. So, it's always got to be adapted for the person where they are at that point in time, which means that, it's continually updated and reviewed. The key question I try and help clients answer, whether it's, directly or indirectly for them, is just, am I okay? Am I on track? So what we do with that, and financial modelling forms a big core of helping people do that because it can just illuminate what the next 10, 20, 30 years for people could look like. And what that helps people do is to say, look, one other example I've got is, help the client show, look, if you keep doing this, no problem, you retire at 50 if you want. Oh, but there's a lot of life after 50. Like, I couldn't sit on a beach for 40 years or, what would I do with myself? I'm like, exactly. True. Why stress this hard to do it? Like, enjoy it a little bit more now. So, you adapt the plan, help him show, maybe we spend an extra 20 grand a year and I'm in a position where I've got, complete independence to choose if I want to keep working at 55. That sounds pretty good. And then what will happen, we might anticipate that the markets go up by 7% every year, but if it goes up by 20, it's like, oh, you're back to retiring at 55 if you want. Well, let's update it. Do I spend more again or do I take less risk? So there's a few levers that most people can pull, but I think it's all about continually updating the plan and helping people understand at any point in time where they're at.
Jayden, I know you love a plan, both personally and professionally. Yep. I think you are a secretly travel agent. Sometimes
my wife hates it.
There's a plan for everything. Now, let's dive into your journey to become a dad and having 3 kids. How do you go with the chaos of 3 kids, or maybe they're not chaotic, but it's hard to plan with one kid personally. Yeah. How do you go with 3, and how do you balance that challenge of professionally and personally, being a planner and you coping with that?
Yeah, look, it can be a real battle at times, but I again am extremely lucky that my wife is the person she is, and I don't just say that to get brownie points. I think we really complement each other fantastically well. And, we have always had conversations around the type of parents that we wanted to be. And my wife is probably a little bit of, I'm not going to say rare, but uncommon. And I'll use my two sisters as an example because they couldn't be full 24/7 mums. They're just too ambitious. They're, career driven, and that's absolutely okay. Whereas my wife just isn't. She's very happy and very good at being a mum and like entertaining the kids and cleaning up after them and just doing absolutely everything for them, because I certainly couldn't do that. But it also allows me, and to be fair, like be a little bit selfish, because I am driven in other areas like my sisters as well. And, I want to create a good business. I genuinely enjoy the struggle of, leading people, improving systems, processes, challenging myself to, grow the business. But yeah, it can be hard when you've also like Bree will text me because she can see my calendar and see I don't have a meeting on. But it's like, I've still got a lot of other stuff to do. And she'll be like, oh, it's raining. Can you do pickup? Because I don't want to have to take the baby, get it out of the car in the pram, which I'm like, well, that's fair enough. So I'm like, yeah, I'll, go do that. But it wasn't in the plan for the day. And that means I'm either working at night or, things are getting pushed around for the next day. So yeah, it's hard to manage, but yeah, I think I'm just very lucky that I'm in a really great relationship with a good person.
You've mentioned your two sisters. You've come from a very driven family, as you've said. Do you think that's something that you were raised to be like that? Were you born to be that way? Is it just who you are as people? And how has the relationship with your sisters impacted your, I guess, profession now?
Yeah, again, that's another great question, because it's something that Carly actually posed to me like a few years ago. Why are we this way? And I couldn't put my finger on it. I know, like, mum and dad did a lot for us growing up. Like I said, they always gave us, I think, every opportunity. Like, I don't think they gave us everything we ever wanted, but Carly played, I think, netball for Victoria. She also played lacrosse for Victoria. So playing state sport isn't, no small feat, but it's also a lot for parents to drive the kids around to training and tournaments and all that sort of stuff, which, our parents always did. Emily played netball for Victoria like 4 or 5 or however many times. Sorry, Emily, if I got it wrong. But again, huge commitment. I played for the Jets. So early on, that was getting out to training in Caroline Springs at like 4:30, 5 o'clock on the ring road, and it wasn't an easy feat. So they did a lot for us, but why we were all built to be like, a bit ambitious and driven, I don't really know. Maybe there was a little bit of competitiveness between us. Certainly not from my end, because Carly was always bigger and stronger than me. So by the time I actually matured a little bit and was bigger than her, it was too late to get any payback. But yeah, there's got to be something there. I've just never been able to put my finger on it.
So 2 years later, after the dinner table question was posed, you still don't have the answer?
I don't have the answer. No. Yeah, it's escaped me, that one, and I'll just put it down to a mystery that will never be solved. Unless Carly wants to come back and suggest something, but I know it'll be from a selfish point of view.
Cop that, Carly.
As you mentioned, you've got, a competitive background essentially. In terms of, your day-to-day, things aren't going to plan. Like, what's your why when you're under pressure? Would you say it's a competitive edge, or like, yeah, what is it that drives you?
Well, there's many things. I heard someone say a few weeks ago now, like, if you're lacking meaning and want instant meaning, like, have kids. It's like, well, true, not that easy. But also, like, kids give you a great amount of meaning and purpose, but there's also times when I'm, like, at home with the kids, they're begging for attention and for me to play with them or do something, and I'm just, like, thinking about this thing at work that, like, I want to solve, or a client's emailed me and I just really, really want to get back to them. And I talk about it a lot with some clients, like when we project out what a really great life looks like for them, one of the prompts I use is learn. Is there anything in 10 years that you'd really love to look back on and say, I'm so glad I did that? Because I think, and I look again at my career in footy, a lot of the purpose, meaning, and not validation, but I just love the training, I guess. Like, I love the struggle, love stressing in the gym. That's not even really playing footy. So I think for some people, the struggle, and it's not the struggle to put food on the table or a roof over our head, but just really testing myself and proving to myself and improving in some certain area or achieving a goal. Same way people when they run a marathon. Like, all the Ks that you do up to it, like, they do it because they know like how good it's going to be when they finish and cross that line. So it's, the journey is the reward. I think that's, what it is. I love being slightly stressed. I love working my way through it. I love the challenge. I love learning, and I'm just very curious to always learn and try new things. But then, at the end of the day, I've also got to put food on the table, and the kids give me a lot of meaning and purpose as well.
And would you say that as well, like, with the stress, because I'm the same, it's as if I love it, but it's not until after that I realise, okay, that was worth it? Like, do you feel the same?
Yeah, for sure. There's certain times it's like, man, why did I say yes to this? Like, I just didn't need to, and now it actually is really stressing me out for no real reason. It's so hard, almost impossible to get that balance right too. And there's probably many reasons for it, but it's a hard one to crack, and I don't think we're ever going to get it right as much as we search for perfection. You just got to roll with the punches and know that sometimes you will get it right and sometimes you won't, and sometimes you'll be lying in bed at 3 a.m. thinking, why did I take this client on?
Charles mentioned in one of our first episodes about, in our role in property and as real estate agents, we often know something about someone's life before a lot of their family, friends, etc. Do as well. And I'm guessing your role is very similar, that you would know a lot about a person more than some of their closest family and friends. How do you, I guess, balance the emotion or the emotional toll of some of the things that you know about people or you have to see people go through? And then, as you said, like trying to juggle that you've got kids with competing priorities and those types of things. Talk us through that. Yeah,
that's a difficult one too, and something that I think is a real privilege in our profession and the role I have. Families and people put a lot of trust in me that they can talk about a lot of different things, and it's something that, again, I don't really take for granted. It can be difficult at times. I had someone yesterday that was crying at the end of a meeting. I had someone last week with just some of the questioning, and he was brought to tears as well. It's a hard thing because I like to solve problems and I like to provide solutions, and not always can I do that. When people are going through real, hard times with health battles or loss of a loved one or, just financial stress, I can't solve all these problems. I can provide support. I know a lot of people, having done it for a long period of time, and you can provide support in other ways like referrals to someone who may be able to help them. It can be really difficult. The other thing I try my best to do is, even though I've got my own set of personal values and things I believe, I don't ever try and, force them on anyone as well. I always want to give people space and, a space to live, or, this is your plan for you. This is your life for you. I don't sit here in judgment of you. Whatever you want to do, I'm cool with that. I just want you, to help you get there and achieve it. So I think it's just creating, again, that space for people to be able to say what they want, build a level of trust, and knowing that if I can't solve something for them, that, I've likely got someone who can at least help in some way, shape or form. But again, people in mourning, you can't, what can you do really? And it can be difficult in those times when you see people going through really, really hard times. And actually, we had a client pass away about 2 weeks ago. I remember going out to visit them maybe 2.5 years ago, sat out in their backyard around the table, had a great conversation. She was just a firecracker, like nicest lady ever, early 70s, seemed like she was going to be around forever. And 2 years later, she's gone, and what do you say to the partner? It's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And something obviously you don't take lightly, as you said, with that. So you mentioned there you don't try and project, I guess, your beliefs or whatnot. I think this is usually it's the other way around. Usually you're asking all the questions, and I've noticed that you do when we're talking about whatever I come up with or call you about. You ask a lot of questions. Is that something that you've naturally always done? Is that something that you do in a personal kind of conversation as well, or is it just your way of answering my questions when I bring you something completely left field?
No, that is a skill that I've had to develop, and it's something that at first I had to become aware of it. I mentioned earlier on that when I first got introduced to financial planning, I had a bit of an interest in planning, investing, helping people make money. But you slowly realise that people are yeah, cool. If you can't connect the dots and help people articulate the kind of life they want to live and how all this stuff they're doing is going to help them achieve it, I feel like it's not meaningless, but it's definitely less meaningful. And it's not easy to sit across from someone and say, okay, well, tell me, what life do you want? I've had people sit there and say, I want to pay off the mortgage. It's well, what's that going to give you?
I told you once I wanted to get my helicopter license just to make you go away. I was like, I don't have any other goals. Thank you for coming.
It's hard. And I said before as well, you kind of got to meet people where they're at in their stage of life. But yeah, the questioning thing is just something that, I've been really fortunate. I've had a lot of great mentors, been involved with different coaches. I'm just really curious as well, and there's a lot of content and resources out there for advisors. But the thing that to me is quite honestly the most obvious thing is the better your questions, the better the results, the better the answers. Because when I ask someone, what kind of life do you want to live? I mean, I don't have those answers. You've got them. But I've got to find a way to elicit them from you, in a way that's really meaningful and not just, I want financial independence, I want to take a few holidays and, those sorts of things. So, and that's a skill that I'm still, to be honest, feel like I'm way off where I could be.
And have you ever been in a position where you've had to, well, not turn away a client, but essentially turn away a client because perhaps maybe you're not sort of building that relationship and that openness and that type of thing, you're not getting what you need from them, vice versa? Have you ever been in that position? Or is it something you can just work through?
I guess the other thing, we probably differentiate ourselves a little bit from the traditional advice model, which was, come on board, we'll manage your investments and you'll pay us 1% forever. When I started in the industry and that was the model we were following, I'd wake up every day with a bug in my stomach because it didn't sit well with me, and I found it really hard. Effectively, financial planners, we've still got to sell our services, and I found it really difficult. So, over a number of years, we developed our offering, and it came down to one where it's you don't have to continue with us, and there's no downside to not doing it. Like I mentioned before, I think financial planning is an ongoing thing, and there's value to continually doing it, but value is in the eye of the beholder. If someone doesn't want to, then that's okay. So I think the way we've developed our process, we can provide someone with a plan, and if we connect it, if they trust us, if we've got very similar values, they'll come back and do it again. If not, well, they've got the plan. They kind of know what the strategies are. They may be able to do it themselves, or they might take it and find someone else. So it sort of does it by itself. And I think I wrote a LinkedIn post about it today that at Cruise at the moment, we will convert 65% of clients that we have a discovery meeting with. And these are already clients that we've probably had a phone call with, and we know that they've got the complexity or the financial resources to be a client. So they've been pre-vetted. But some people just aren't ready to have a philosophical conversation around what's a good life look like. And that's okay. They might be looking for someone that's just going to tell them to make the most amount of money. And that's typically not going to be us. So they'll sort of self-weed themselves out, whether it's initially or over time.
Who needs a financial advisor? You said there's some people that maybe aren't ready or aren't in the position maybe to have that conversation, but who actually needs a financial advisor? Is there a criteria?
Yeah. Look, there's some people that, so another client I work with said, because he actually deals with other financial advisors just in his line of work, and he just said to me, man, I love your service so much, it's so hand-holdy. I just don't know any other way, unfortunately. Riley, who we've got as an advisor, he's probably a little bit better at, this is the advice. You see this person because you're not really paying me to be a hand holder to that extent. So you go see them and do your thing. I've got heaps of people that I've spoken to, and look, they could use a financial advisor, but they're doing a lot of it themselves, and they're doing a lot of it really well. They might not need a financial advisor, but they just need someone to provide them guidance here and there. I think everyone needs a financial plan, but whether you need someone to keep you accountable, make sure your strategic direction is appropriate for your goals, objectives, circumstances, make sure your investments, in line with all of that as well. I guess not everyone needs or wants that. Everyone could probably benefit in some way, shape or form from it. But yeah, there's some people that are more than capable at doing it themselves, but say that's less than 1% of the population.
Do you think the way you advise is going to be future-proofed with AI and ChatGPT? Because I know that so many people can now, throw their spendings into ChatGPT and it comes up with a budget for them and all those types of things. By the way you're setting up your business, it sounds like it is hand-holdy. So it is me sending you something saying, hey, should I do this? And then you're asking 30 questions and me answering my own question, whether I should do it or not. Have you deliberately done that, or is that just something that is luck again?
It's definitely luck. I think with index funds in particular, investing particularly in shares, it's getting very democratized and it's a race to the bottom. It's, anyone can open an app now and buy the S&P 500 with 5 clicks of the button. That's not where I think the value is, and that's probably what will replace or will be replaced by AI first if it isn't already to an extent. I think the next level beyond that is still probably the strategic planning. We can definitely see a reality within a couple of years where AI could do it more effectively, faster, cheaper than pretty much every financial advisor here. Whether, Bitcoin as an example, I believe in the story of Bitcoin, but for me to go buy Bitcoin and then put it in cold storage or something like that, I don't trust myself to do it. And I'm 35. I like to think I'm pretty young and techie, I guess. But what does that mean for 70, 80, 90% of the rest of the population? Are they going to trust themselves to do it? It's the same as, 70 to 80% of the population actually going to trust what an AI model's telling them about how they should structure their whole life's work. Maybe. I don't know.
So maybe I overtrust it a little bit.
I don't know. The reality is it could be. And I was talking to a client I've got who's relocating from Dubai to France at the end of the year. And he's got a pretty big liquidity event coming up. And he told me, this is how it's going to be taxed in Australia because I'm a non-resident. And I'm like, where'd you get that from? He goes, ChatGPT. And then I looked at the source from it on the ATO website and it seemed to say the same thing. Let me come back to you on that. I didn't even have the answer straight away. I'd go and check with an accountant because I'm not a tax accountant. But I think the thing that is probably going to future-proof ourselves a little bit more than what AI can at the moment, but I also don't see it being a bridge too far for it, in the very short term, is just the questioning and helping people, elicit what kind of life they want to live. And even a lot of it too is, people might have thought about it themselves, but have couples had that conversation together? Have they had it with a third party, asking questions that they think maybe the spouse just wants to be asked? And I think there's a real skill set to that. That's probably the last thing AI will replace, but I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility that it won't. So. Yes,
very much so. And I guess let's just dive into a couple of questions about our relationship advisor and client here.
Yay.
Yay. This is where you might just be able to ask me some questions back and be off the hook a little bit. But I'm
happy to ask you a couple of questions.
Oh, no. We will avoid that. How, I guess, having someone like myself so pro-property, I've got some sort of index fund that you've advised me into. I call it the boring fund. And I don't even know to log in, and I think that's something that you...
Very appropriately named.
Is that because you just don't need to check it? It just kind of does its thing? Yeah.
Yeah, it's boring.
This is very new to me, by the way.
It's boring. It doesn't do anything. It's not exciting like property. You can't touch, see it, feel it. No one else knows about it. I call it the boring fund because it is, in my eyes, boring, being so pro-property. How has, I guess, that challenged you as an advisor, someone who is so... in property, wanting to always talk to you about property and then, calling your other advice boring?
Well, I like the fact that it is a boring fund because the best investors are the ones that don't check it, the ones that don't look at it. They're happy just to let time do its thing. Whether we need an explanation on compounding returns and why that's so important, I'm sure whoever watches this or listens can go and Google that one. But it can be a challenge to an extent. But again, like I said before, it's not necessarily about meeting the person where they are, but what are your interests? What's more likely to going to be a successful financial plan for the person I'm advising? I think one of the things that we spoke about early on too is, given your industry and line of work, when it comes to property, you could potentially have a bit of a comparative advantage. People like to compare shares to property, but the reality is when you talk about shares, like all the information is all known by the whole market. Like it's all priced into the price of the security, unless someone's got what's the equivalent of insider information, which by the way is illegal. There's no way to really find any arbitrage. Where in the property industry, all the information's not perfect. It's not in some dashboard that any person can go and access and say, well, this property is trading at 15 times its price to earnings ratio, or its yield is 2% below what the market average is for this area, or its vacancy rates, or whatever it is. I think there's some things that are coming out that are providing a lot of that information, but it's still not common knowledge, I guess. So for you as an example, and I've got another client too who's a buyer's agent, and for him, like I look at his property portfolio and I'm like, man, I cannot replicate this in any other investment. Okay, so like when it comes to your investment strategy, property as an asset class makes sense for all these reasons and to help you achieve these goals. I'm not going to get that sort of return anywhere else, but if you ever want to diversify away from that because of these reasons and because of the asset class and because there could be a macroeconomic event that just wipes out all your gains, then I'll help you. But if not, man, like keep doing what you're doing. And the same came back to you like early on where you could identify where like, pretty quickly you make 50, 60 grand straight away with a deposit of 20. It's a 300% return. Like, I'm not going to get that anywhere. But what happens and what I found even with this other guy, like it can be tiring, it can be exhausting. And people talk about, passive income. Yeah, you can pay a property manager, but you still got to manage the property manager. They're still going to call you when the tenant hasn't paid rent or something's happened. It's never fully passive. And there are just a lot more risks involved with property too. So, but I get it as an asset class. I get it why it's a great wealth creation vehicle, and I get it why people are interested. And for someone like you, like why it can be an even bigger benefit to invest in something like that.
I think a lot of our rental providers, the advice that I try and give them is the best investment property you have is the one you don't actually know the number or where it even is to a certain degree, because otherwise, as you said,
boring investment
property. Otherwise, you're right. There is always someone moving in and out of an investment property. There's always the bills that come in, the differences in your ledger, and the unpredictability of interest rates and those types of things. You mentioned, and one of the things that I think I like about properties, I think it's not as risky as maybe a lot of other people do because of the knowledge that I've got, and the saying is knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. You seem to have a story, a client, or a quote, or a book recommendation all the time for every question that I've got.
Yeah.
You never seem to stop learning. How do you keep up with learning, and what's your favourite way to learn?
Well, it's time to come clean. I think I've only read about 1 or 2 books this year. 3 kids, there's a lot of chaos. I think I mentioned before I've gone back playing footy the last year, and with that I've gone back to the gym. So there's very, very little time for much else. And even when there is, I'm just generally pretty exhausted. I think during COVID and when I had the one child, but she was young, not running around and causing chaos. I just went down a rabbit hole and just wanted to learn as much as I could and just sort of followed wherever my curiosity went. I still get that, driving to Swan Hill, there's 4-hour drives each way. And if I ever do it by myself, I'll listen to 2 or 3 podcasts along the way. I went for a run this morning, but I got told it's called raw dogging.
Yes.
I miss that opportunity to listen to one, but sometimes I will. But yeah, I'm just curious to learn. But I think in the last 12 months ago, I sort of stepped back and I'm accumulating all this information, and sometimes it's too much. And I'm definitely, hopefully, not putting myself in this category, but, you know, you talk about, or you might have heard of, how do you explain it?
Is it almost like paralysing?
Paralysing, yeah, like the
got
tortured
too
genius.
Yeah.
Where you accumulate all this information and so much of it conflicts, you just can't do anything with it. And I think Elon Musk once said, you know, like, he's pretty revered for being like an extremely intelligent guy, and he's obviously done what he's done. But he said, like, you don't want to be in this. Like, you don't want to know what's going on inside his head. And certainly not comparing myself to Elon Musk. I just sort of heard that and got to a point. It's like, well, let's actually start doing something with this information I've accumulated and work out, okay, well, what works best for me right now, testing some of it. Because again, yeah, some of it will work best for different people. Some of it will work better for people at different times in their lives as well. So I put the brakes on it a little bit, but still I can't help myself. And funnily enough, like last night, I did go down like a bit of a spiral on YouTube. But yeah, it's just hard to find the time at the moment, but it's still something that's always front of my mind.
Yeah, as you said, and I think knowledge is power, but sometimes ignorance is bliss. And I often think that, would I start a business again with knowing how hard it is? And I recently listened to another podcast and someone said, just, you know, don't do it. It's just so hard, so tiresome, and you may as well, you know, stay as a PAYG employee if you don't want the kind of mental load of it. And I think, you know, being young when I started the business, it was a completely different ball game for me at that point in time versus now. Just thinking about the effort of that is, you know, paralysing to a certain degree, knowing what I know now.
And for you, like I mentioned luck before, but, you know, starting your business when and where you did at the time in your life when, you know, an opportunity came at that age. What if the opportunity came now? How different could it have been?
I'd run. Kidding. Wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah.
Well, it's been, so insightful. Thank you for sharing a lot of this, Jayden. I thought if we could sort of potentially end the note on any advice that you'd give anyone, like Megan said before, does everyone need a financial plan, things like that? Like, is there any tips and tricks that you can offer to those listening?
Yeah, so I guess if you're just sitting there, like the ones I see a lot of the time is people analysis paralysis. There's so much information out there, but what's relevant to my circumstances? Like, what's going to make the most impact to, you know, either my well-being, the life I live, or just my net wealth over the next period of time? If you're just struggling to make a decision, I think, you know, that's a pretty good time to reach out and at least have a conversation with a financial advisor. I also think that, you know, if you feel like you're going well too, have a conversation with a financial advisor, even if they point out a few things that you can look at yourself. Well, that's still time well spent. If at the end of that you work out, well, hey, there's a lot of scope here to, you know, make some potentially decent changes and improve my overall outcomes, well, again, I think that's something most people should do. I just definitely think that if you've never reached out to a financial advisor, like a 20, 30-minute initial call just to see how they could help, you know, what they could do for you is, you know, 30 minutes well spent, and most of it should be no obligation as well.
I definitely just asked that for myself, by the way, because sign me up.
You'll be reaching out, booking 30 minutes.
Very similar. It's one of those things, like, you always think about it, but it's like actually making that move. So.
Let's end on some rapid fire questions. The problem with our recent rapid fire questions, they haven't been very rapid.
Yeah, right.
We've been asking what should be one word questions with your answers. Anyway, whatever that way is.
So wait, one word answers?
Yeah, but sometimes the questions we ask don't even allow that. So we really stitch you up. I'll start with one, Netflix or Stan?
Netflix.
Why? Is it because it's cheaper?
I watched Happy Gilmore 2 and I was probably disappointed, so I'd probably like to take back that answer and go to Stan now.
You didn't like it? Just...
Nah. They got a few cheap laughs out of me, but it was pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, it's very far-fetched, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you had to call one person and know for sure that they're answering, no matter what time of the day it is or no matter what day of the week it is, who are you calling?
It's definitely not Mum.
She's working.
Yeah, and her phone's probably at my house. I'd say Brie. She's always good for a chat. Even if I'm in like the house, you know, in the office out the back.
Oh, it's the best.
Love that.
Last question. Favourite holiday destination?
Queensland.
Yeah.
It's hard to go past Queensland, I think. particularly for us Victorians. It's July right now, so
That's
most places
true.
are better than here.
Yes, and we were chatting earlier, Jayden's family have a house up there, so it's good for you to be able to get up there quite often.
Yeah, we're again, keep using the word luck, but yeah, definitely very lucky to be able to just shoot up there in the depths of winter down here when school holidays, and got a nice place to stay at near the beach, which is great for the kids, great for the wife. Yeah, very lucky.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Jayden. If anyone wants to know any more information, we'll chuck some links in the episode notes. Great chat, always a pleasure.
Thanks,
Might be
Bex.
back for a
Thanks,
part
Talia.
2, never know.
Absolutely, love to.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.